I'm Roger Baker, Executive Director of the Stratfor Center for Applied Geopolitics at RANE, a global center of excellence for geopolitical intelligence and analysis. Learn how you can put geopolitics to work for your organization at ranenetwork.com.
This is RANE's Essential Geopolitics podcast. I'm Emily Donahue. Welcome. There's a small landlocked country in the Balkans that has been the focus of a battle for ownership with repeated outright conflicts since the 14th century. The country is Kosovo, and recently there's talks that tensions there could spark yet another conflict. But is there really such a risk? Well, here with some history and background is Matteo Ilardo, RANE's Europe analyst. Matteo, it's great to have you back on the podcast.
Hi, Emily. Great to be back here.
What is exactly happening in Kosovo right now?
Yeah, lots of things happening in Kosovo. We have yet another day of blockades and demonstrations in the north of the country, the region of Kosovo where the majority of the Serbian minority in the country lives. We're talking about 50,000 people living in North Kosovo. Protesters are currently showing no sign they will remove trucks that are currently placed at several border crossings between the two countries, between Serbia and Kosovo. These are roadblocks, basically trucks filled with gravel and other heavy machinery, impossible to move without the cooperation of protesters. So this is already causing disruptions. But beside that, these roadblocks were accompanied by a flare-up in tensions and violence during the weekend. We saw tensions soaring with hundreds of ethnic Serbs at several border crossings engaging with Kosovo's police, which is majority Albanian, exchanging gunfires at several checkpoints. And even we had a report of European police mission called EULEX, one of their patrolling unit, one of their armored vehicles was attacked by a stun grenade by an unidentified individual. There were no victims, but this clearly shows the level of escalations we're witnessing in North Kosovo these days. Kosovo authorities also said 2 Serbs were eventually arrested for attacking police officers in the weekends. Again, no injuries have been reported so far, but we are seeing effectively the worst escalation of ethnic violence in Kosovo since the barricades of 2011.
Can you get a little deeper into the main drivers for these tensions, both recent and possibly historical?
Sure. Among the very trigger of the demonstration we saw in the weekend that continues still now with roadblocks, we had basically the arrest of a senior Serbian police officers in North Kosovo that was together with hundreds of other Serbian officers resigned from his post in November to protest against what is the most proximate driver of the conflict, which is recent regulations by the government in Pristina and Kosovo that required all Serbian drivers living in Kosovo to phase out old car license plates that were issued by Serbia before the country's independence, before Kosovo's independence, to use new license plates issued by the state of Kosovo. As a reminder, and that again, when we'll go deeper into the root causes, ethnic Serbs in Kosovo do not recognize the sovereignty of Pristina, so this clearly is a hugely political and symbolic issue. Eventually, we started seeing protests and tensions flaring ever since this summer, when there was a deadline for such an agreement to be implemented. And this agreement, this rule, the implementation of the rules were eventually postponed gradually month in month until we arrived to a new deadline in November, during which the government in Pristina seemed this time very much intended to go through with this implementation, although gradual, and that triggered a mass resignation and demonstrations in North Kosovo from police officers that basically refused to start fining, issuing fines to their own other ethnic Serbs in the north. So one of these Serbian officers was arrested on charges of terrorism as he was trying to crossing the border into Serbia, and that triggered very violent protests that so far have lasted days, have escalated into violence, and has forced the government in Pristina to postpone local elections that were supposed to be held on the 19th of November to replace several of those official civil servants that resigned their posts in protest. Also, several of Serbian police officers were replaced by ethnic Albanian police, so sent by special forces sent by Pristina to enhance law enforcement in North Kosovo, that alienated even more the local community.
Let me hop in here for a second, Matteo, and ask you to clarify the ethnic tensions between the different groups in Kosovo.
So the ethnic violence actually dates back way before the Kosovo's very declaration of independence in 2008. We saw violence erupting in the 1998-1999 war, where Albanian separatists were attacked basically by Serbian troops that repressed the uprising violently, and that triggered NATO intervention that bombed Serbia, forced its troops out of Kosovo, which eventually declared independence in 2008. And the NATO-led peacekeeping mission, the KFOR, has been deployed in Kosovo ever since 1998-1999 war. The presence of NATO troops so far has kept the peace, although with periodical flare-ups, like not unlike the ones we saw this summer, and even the ones we're currently witnessing. The problem is the significant escalation, not only on the ground, but also in the rhetoric of the two leaders from both Kosovo and Serbia in particular. The president of Serbia, Aleksandar Vučić, even raised the prospect of having Serbian troops intervening militarily to restore peace in North Kosovo. He said he would ask NATO permission to have 1,000 Serbian troops return to Kosovo. This obviously is not allowed under the agreements that were signed to end the war in 1999 actually, but it definitely shows a significant escalation in rhetoric, and US and EU are both here urging the two sides to de-escalate, and we may see this sort of diplomatic pressure increasing moving forward, particularly from the US, that is the real peacekeeper here.
So let's talk about a way out of this current round of tensions. Are the two sides able to find something, do you think?
So the situation remains very complex. First of all, Kosovo, after declaring independence from Serbia in 2008, has never been recognized as a sovereign state by Serbia, that still refuses to do so. This is the main point of contention between the two states. Serbia calls North Kosovo part of Greater Serbia. It does recognize it as its own territory, and demands some concessions from Pristina, among which the main demand remains this association of Serbian majority municipalities, which would guarantee a series of supervisory power sharing arrangements in the region. And this is something that was effectively agreed between the two countries during EU-led negotiations in 2013, if I'm not wrong, in Brussels. But Pristina has refused to implement this aspect of the agreement ever since. So that's the main demand from Serbia, whereas Kosovo clearly demands official recognition from Serbia. So the two countries are clearly on very separate, very polarized positions, but in broader geopolitical terms, this is obviously happening in the context of an overall deterioration of the security situation in Europe. Serbia is often accused of acting as a proxy of its historical ally, its bigger brother, so to say, Russia, to create instability in the Balkans and draws NATO's attention and resources away from Ukraine. But honestly, there is a series of lingering issues here and real grievances on the ground on both sides that are actually those fueling the crisis. So it's really about sovereignty and control. It's not about license plates. It's not just about Russia. So the way forward is actually to bring the two sides together, and to probably the EU and the US will try and insist, apply more pressure on Kosovo rather than Serbia. A good way forward would be to accelerate political agreement, giving Kosovo real reasons to believe its recent application to join the EU will be taken seriously, and demand Kosovo to recognize what Serbia is asking for recognition in North Kosovo, the Association of Serbian Municipalities. So that would be the first way forward towards normalization of bilateral ties, but the way ahead is still long.
Matteo Ilardo is RANE's Europe analyst. Thank you, Matteo.
Thank you, Emily. Pleasure being here.
Your latest analysis of unrest in North Kosovo can be found in RANE Worldview.
Yes, indeed.
RANE Worldview is our platform for strategy and operational risk professionals with customizable risk and geopolitical intelligence, real-time threat monitoring, and client-specific briefings. RANE Worldview is the trusted source for more than 500 major global organizations. Become a RANE client today. Visit ranenetwork.com for details. RANE network.com. I'm Emily Donahue. Thanks for listening.